Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the What the Fantasy Football Show. We got a great show for you tonight, and of course, we are a member of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network, going strong, bringing you lots of different podcasts with lots of different information. We have IDP covered now. We have Superflex. We have Dynasty. We have a little bit of everything coming to you. Hopefully, we'll be adding some DFS shows soon, so make sure you pay attention because we got a lot of things coming at you. But tonight we got a great show for you. We're going to cover a lot of different players that are in the news that people are talking about. We'll give you our takes. But first, I have to introduce the man, the one and only, the guy who gets it done no matter where he's sitting, no matter where he's laying. We just don't know. But that is the one and only, Mr. Tony Sincata.
Thank you, Jim. I got to say, I'm proud to be standing up and sitting up tonight. I am not laying down, and I'm figuring that tonight's going to be a great show because I'm horizontal as, Mike Blewett's been all day trying to be the good daddy and dealing with a sick daughter. So, Mike, this is going to be a good show because you get a little relief of the real-life pressures, and that's what we're here for.
I agree. That's what fantasy football is all about, trying to let people forget about the nonsense that they're watching on the news every day and a little bit of release from their everyday life, but also, try and maybe win a little bit of cash if we can get them some cash. But thank you for saying that. Yeah, she's a little under the weather, but I'm sure she'll be fine in no time.
You're listening to WTF Fantasy. I got to tell you right now, you listen to every other podcast, they're going to start out with Tyreek Hill. They're going to start out with a Todd Gurley. That's bullshit. We're going to start out with a Colts third wide receiver because that's what we do here. We cover it all. And I got to ask the two guys here, who are you drafting in deeper leagues, Chester Rogers or Parris Campbell? I'm in a 17-team league, and I keep drafting in these 17-team leagues. I don't even know how many I have. And the more and more I look at Chester Rogers, the more and more I like him. And I think that if Andrew Luck is healthy and this Colts offense keeps progressing behind a solid offensive line, that people are actually sleeping on Chester Rogers in these deeper leagues. And I see Campbell getting picked ahead of him. And basically everything I read out of that Colts camp is Campbell's having trouble running the routes. He might be a big talent. But sometimes when you look at the National Football League, the top wide receivers, they sometimes take a little time to get acclimated to the pro game. I mean, I go back 5-10 years ago before this was a pass-only league. Wide receivers would take 3 years before they would hit their stride in the NFL. It's a little quicker learning curve now, but I'm going with Chester Rogers here. Mike Blue, what are you doing?
Obviously, last year he comes in with 53 catches. I thought it was a nice increase for him. He played in all 16 games for them last year. But you do bring up the luck question. We don't know how long this is going to linger. I don't think it's going to impact the offense for the entirety of the season, but you start to worry about that third wide receiver on an offense, which does it impact it at all? Plus, we have Jack Doyle back. It's hard for me to be all in on either guy, but I think your greater point is Rodgers versus Campbell, which I love Campbell in dynasty leagues. I drafted him in the first round of my dynasty league, IDP league that Jim set up many years ago. But I just think fading the rookie here is probably the smart thing to do. You have two veteran tight ends. You have a really good running back in Mack. You have a pass-catching back in Hines, whom they utilized last year. Plus Rodgers, Funchess. There's just a lot of balls to go around. And I don't know that the rookie's going to break through if he's not having a good camp.
Jim, what do you say you?
Look, I get what both of you guys are saying. I absolutely do. I think Rodgers will be the guy early in the season. As Tony said, Campbell isn't having the greatest camp. Plus, he's a little banged up a little bit. So, definitely hurts his progression because, rookies have to be on the field as much as possible in preseason to get all the work in. I get that. But the fact of the matter remains that Rodgers doesn't have any upside. He doesn't present any upside. And if I'm going to take a flyer on a wide receiver that late in the draft, and that's what it is, we're talking late in the draft, it's not going to be a guy like Rodgers that doesn't really give me a lot of upside. He just doesn't. There's not much there. I'd much rather take the shot on Campbell, let him sit, if he doesn't do much first few games and nothing really happens, then, you could always push him out there for a waiver wire guy that's hitting and go with it. And you could do the same thing with Rodgers, but I just think I'd much rather take the chance on the guy that may have upside as a red zone threat, something Rodgers has never done.
Here's the one thing that when you say no upside, If I look at Andrew Luck last year, he struggled through the first 4 games, right? He looked like he wasn't back totally. If I could get Rodgers, even without an injury to one of the first 2 wide receivers, to catch 1.1 catch more per game, all of a sudden I'm at 70 catches.
Well, you said it earlier. I don't see that happening. Not with Doyle coming back with Ebron there. I just don't expect it to be that down that far. I mean, even Nyheim Hines is going to get a lot of work as a pass catching back. I think Rodgers is a nice safe play, but at that point in the draft, I don't want safe.
I'll make a case. First of all, Rodgers is virtually free, Tony, unless we're talking about deeper leagues. Campbell is going 57th wide receiver off the board. So you have that comparison. You don't even necessarily have to draft Rodgers. You can just be on your watch list. But here's the case for Rodgers. Campbell continues to struggle through camp, maybe still a little banged up. A banged-up rookie's going to be in a tough spot. I know people will point to Odell Beckham, but he's the exception, not the rule. And say Funchess just bombs out, and we really don't know what he's going to be. He's slotted in as a starting wide receiver, but we still don't know what Devin Funchess is, or maybe we do, and it's not encouraging. And then Rodgers slots in where Funchess is just failing at the number 2 wide receiver position, and Rodgers just becomes a more reliable option. I think that could be it. I just think overall this ball's going to be spread around a lot with Jack Doyle coming back.
Well, we're going to drop down to number 9 here because it's a Colts, and we'll just throw it in there. D'Onta Foreman was cut by the Houston Texans to a surprise to some, and then picked up by the Colts. Jim, any fantasy value in D'Onta Foreman?
Well, he could be used at goal line work in this offense. Let's face it, Mac is okay at it. That's definitely not Nyheim Hines' job. Jordan Wilkins hasn't really shown that tendency, so he could do it. Do I want to invest anything in him at this point? I can't say that I do. I really thought he'd be back last year, and I grabbed some chances with him, very late. You didn't really have to pay anything for him, but it didn't work out. And then for this year, he's finally back on the field. He's finally supposedly healthy. And then he is not working hard. He's not putting in the effort. He's coming late to meetings. Man, I don't want guys like that on my team. I don't like that kind of player. You figure all this time he's had off, he'd be chomping at the bit to get on the field, and he's not putting the work in. You know what? Go. Leave.
I'll tell you what, Jim's right on it. I would pick Nyheim Hines absolutely ahead of him. And Jim's right. I think we got a dog here. I mean, the Houston Texans cut this guy, and they don't exactly have John Riggins and O.J. Simpson behind Lamar Miller.
You're right. You're right, Tony. It was surprising to many of us, not because everybody's enamored with Lamar Miller, but they have virtually an unknown depth chart. Buddy Howell, Josh Ferguson, Tawan Jones is there, but, I don't know who they're going to keep out of that crew. It's very possible he's not going to find himself on the Colts roster at the end of camp. They have to keep a 4th running back. Maybe he's there, but I talked to Jason Braddock, our friend, who was covering Texans camp, and he said he wasn't sure that Foreman was going to make the Colts roster, and I think a big reason why he was released by the Texans is that he's just not really doing special teams work. And if you're a backup running back, you have to do special teams work, and he just wasn't really getting it done there, so he became a expendable player.
I'll tell you right now, it's going to be watch that play out, but I don't take a shot on Foreman at the end of your drafts. WTF Fantasy Football. Of course, Jim Day, Mike Blewett, we're getting it done. And you know who's got it done in the past is Ron Rivera and the Carolina Panthers, but last year the offense wasn't great. And I got to tell you, Ron Rivera is praising Curtis Samuel, says he's light years ahead of his rookie season. Jim Day, can Curtis Samuel be the guy in Carolina and, more importantly, the guy in your fantasies?
I've been saying for weeks now I liked him better than DJ Moore because of the value where you can get him. He was coming off the board 5 rounds later than DJ Moore. And I've seen DJ Moore slide into the 4th round. And to me, I can't see it. I can't go there with him. I'd much rather wait 5 rounds later and get Samuel in the 9th round. And then this news comes out, which is really going to suck because it's going to hurt my getting him in that late. He's definitely going to move up ADP at this point. But I've always liked him. He does a little bit of everything. They can move him around. I'm not saying DJ Moore is not a good wide receiver. In fact, I think he could be a great wide receiver. I'm talking fantasy value. If I have to invest a 4th round pick in DJ Moore, I don't like that. Not based on his numbers last year, not based on the fact that he has an aging veteran quarterback who runs a lot and also is coming off a major shoulder surgery, so much so that they're actually trying to change his throwing motion to relieve the torque on the shoulder. Now, you answer me this. If he goes into a game and he's in the heat of battle and he's running around and he's got to make a throw, what do you think he's going to do? You think he's going to throw it the new way, or you think he's going to throw it the way he's been throwing it all his freaking life?
I think it's going to be incomplete 43% of the time, which he actually does now, and leads the league in incompletions. I agree. Every time DJ Moore is drafted, here's the funniest thing. I get excited because one of my players just dropped down further.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I mean, Mike, the Samuel thing is a guy – I'm not interested in the Carolina offense other than a guy named Christian McCaffrey. But if I get later in the drafts, he's a guy I'm going to start looking to target.
I agree in that I think his talent is immense. I really thought they would be utilizing him more to this point. But I don't know. Like Jim's point about him moving up a little bit in drafts is starting to get me a little bit worried. Right now, he's the 39th wide receiver off the board. Does news like this push him into wide receiver 3 consideration? The problem then, Tony, is that now we have a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver, both on Carolina. When Christian McCaffrey is the number 1 wide receiver and Greg Olsen is still there.
That's a problem.
Granted, Olsen could pound his foot into oblivion again and be out 10 games, but Greg Olsen's healthy. He's still the safety blanket, and McCaffrey's the best receiver on the whole team. So that's what gets me worried about it. I don't think the Carolina offense can support what's effectively a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3 wide receiver.
It's going to be very, very interesting. And I think that's a big thing for you people out there that are drafting, is that don't put too much stock into fantasy players that are on poor offenses. And it's hard to figure out who the good offenses, the poor offenses are. But I just look at Carolina in my mind as being one of the offenses that I don't want to jump in with unless it's Christian McCaffrey, because you get all those PPR points. It doesn't matter if they score points, but I think the rest of that offense is going to suffer.
Yeah. Conversely, like the Colts, I think can support a whole bunch of guys.
Yeah.
I don't think Carolina can support that many guys beyond Cam having a good season and McCaffrey having another great season.
Well, wait, all I'm going to say to that is Samuel had 7 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
I'll take that where he's coming off the board. I'll take 7 touchdowns. You know, he's not going to be consistent, but they get him involved. You know, 2 of those touchdowns came on the ground. They just move him around. They get him involved. And again, where you have to draft him, to me, it's a no-brainer. I'll take him in the 9th round. I understand everything you guys are saying, but the fact of the matter is he's a playmaker. They want to get him involved. And at that point in the draft, I have no problem taking a shot on him.
Definitely is a playmaker. I think his strength is better as an NFL player than a fantasy player right now.
And just to summarize what Jim just said, if you drafted in best ball leagues, this guy's a guy you absolutely look at with the 7 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
If you're playing in a league where you put in lineups week to week, and in 1 week he's got 1 catch, 15 yards, and the next week he's got 2 touchdowns, that's the tough part. But if you're in a best ball league, this guy's a no-brainer.
But they are literally saying he has made major bounds.
Yeah. If all of a sudden we get to 10 touchdowns in the 9th round, you know, that's how you win fantasy leagues.
Yeah, right. There's an AP reporter that covers the team, and he literally came out and said yesterday that it wouldn't surprise him at all if Samuel ends up being the number 1 receiver on the team this year because of how good he has been.
News out of Buffalo. We've gone from Carolina to Indianapolis 3rd wide receivers to the Buffalo Bills, people. That's why you listen to this show.
We fly all over the place, and boy, are my arms tired.
Devin Singletary, the rookie running back at Buffalo, is getting plenty of first-team reps, yet LeSean McCoy was told he was the man at the running back position. We have Frank Gore and TJ Yeldon hanging out in Buffalo. Mike Blewett, how do you see this playing out in Buffalo?
I think it's smart to give the rookie as many reps as possible. He's obviously the future at the position. I don't think the Bills feel like they owe LeSean McCoy anything. But when push comes to shove in week 1, assuming he's still on the team, and they will still owe him a bunch of money if they cut him, I just think they'll still utilize LeSean McCoy in a big way. Doesn't mean they have to dedicate a ton of touches to him, but we've said this before. We've hemmed and hawed on McCoy a lot. Do they just move on because it's the last year of his contract and who cares? Or do they just run him into the ground because it's the last year they're paying him $9 million or whatever it is?
Jim,
I think it's smart to give the guy some first-team reps, though. Why not?
this is confusing to me, though, Jim, because I think the Buffalo Bills believe they're a playoff team. I think of this team 2 years ago, we're in the playoffs against Jacksonville. They win in the first round. We had that epic 10-3 game. They got a great defense. Their offense is struggling. So I think they're going to put the best players on the field. But I think that if Singletary was going to be the back, LeSean McCoy is not going to make this team because he would be a distraction on that sideline watching Devin Singletary.
I agree. And really, it's such a weird situation all told, because if they really aren't going to run McCoy as their number one this year, why didn't they trade him at the deadline last year when they had the opportunity? They swore he was still going to be a big part of this offense, and he might be. My problem with McCoy is, look, he only averaged 3.2 yards per carry last year.
Yeah.
You know, it just didn't look like the same McCoy. I don't care what you say. They don't have a great offensive line, and, you know, he just didn't get it done, even though he had plenty of opportunity. And that bothers me a lot. So, again, this comes down to where do I see the value? And the fact of the matter is I can get Singletary, you know, late enough in the draft where I'd rather take the shot on the young gun who really is, you know, still dying to play this game and dying to get on the field. I'm not sure we have that with LeSean McCoy anymore.
No, he's a guy that's cashed a few paychecks here. So this is interesting because I've drafted McCoy, to be honest, in a couple leagues because I see him going sometimes.
So
in the
late,
10th,
right, Tony?
Yeah, the 10th and 11th round. I'm saying, what the hell? People are drafting second and third running backs on teams. I get to a point where, like, just because I've done this a long time and I know what I'm doing, I'm like, you have to pick a starting running back in the 10th or 11th round.
I agree.
It's insane to me.
And Jim's not wrong about the offensive line, but the best offseason signing they made, Oliver was obviously the best addition, but the best offseason signing they made was Mitch Morse. They took him from Kansas City, so they upgraded at center significantly. I still think it's a middle-of-the-table to below-average offensive line, which is why I think McCoy struggled a lot. They were ditching offensive linemen, trading them for picks to try to accumulate more guys. Now, we all know they didn't do enough at wide receiver. We're not scared at tight end either, but I do think they at least improved a little bit. And to your point, Tony, it starts to get cheap enough that you're like, all right, well, who cares if he only plays 6 games and then they bench him and Singletary's the starter? You get 6 games out of a starting running back, and then you move on. None of the guys, you're not going to draft a team and have everybody be a starter for the whole year. So just utilize the guys that are in starting positions, at least for portions of the year, and piece it together on the back end. Maybe it's LeSean McCoy, and you have Kareem Hunt in your lineup to make up the back end with some serious touches towards the end of the year. However you want to piece it together, but that's a strategy.
All right, Jim, you're the guy that drafted the most teams, so I'm going to ask you a scenario if you've done it yet. Everybody talks about handcuffs. I don't hear it as much this year as I have in the past. Would it be a wise decision to take 2 late picks on Singletary and LeSean McCoy?
No, and I'll tell you why. First of all, you also have a quarterback there who loves to run. He did most of his damage last year from a fantasy standpoint anyway, on the ground more than through the air. So you have a quarterback that loves to run and is good at it. So you have that. Then, while I agree with Mike that, you know, the center coming in is a nice addition, still doesn't really push this offensive line to a point where I'm ready to trust it. So at that point, we talk about this a lot. You don't want to invest a lot in a bad offense. Well, I consider this to be a bad offense. They have no tight ends right now whatsoever to speak of. The wide receivers are guys that are mismatches from all over the place. They brought in Cole Beasley in the slot when Zay Jones did a good job in that position last year. They bring in John Brown to be the deep threat when Robert Foster was a big surprise doing that at the end of the season last year. And now you just don't know how these guys are going to work together. Do they push Zay Jones back to the outside and push, Foster back to the bench? That's going to be a mistake. Foster didn't do anything on the outside. He did everything good from the slot, nothing from the outside. So I just don't like this offense. And when I don't like an offense, I don't want to invest that much draft capital, even if they are 2 late picks on a bad team.
Hey, Tony, I spoke with Ryan Talbot. He's a Bills beat writer. Just like a couple of weeks ago. He thought the best value on the entire offense for fantasy players was Robert Foster.
Really?
He thinks he's going to be a serious deep threat throughout the entire year. You saw flashes of it last year, but he's the guy that people are trying to figure out the John Brown, Zay Jones, Cole Beasley dynamic, and he thinks Robert Foster, you can steal him so late that it's going to have a bunch of explosive plays.
Wow, that's actually a good call there. It'd be interesting to see if they go out and get all these 50-cent wide receivers, and then all of a sudden the guy that they had in the house delivers for the Buffalo Bills. Speaking of wide receivers, the projections in the fantasy industry are funny to me because I think a guy like Jake Seeley or maybe a Tristan Cockcroft, they put out their projections, and then I think like everybody just basically goes one more catch, one less catch, three touchdowns. And I don't think anyone really does the homework. And it's always debatable. And if you guys want to debate me on that, you can. Allen Robinson, the Chicago Bears, to me, is baffling in how you can have reasonable expectations for this guy. Because I thought this guy was a quality wide receiver in Jacksonville, and I had expectations last year. And then, of course, he goes to Chicago. He got injuries. Mitchell Trubisky's an up-and-down quarterback. Jim, what are your thoughts on what Allen Robinson's going to bring to the table for the Chicago Bears?
I liked him when he was in Jacksonville. I mean, that the first couple of years, he looked like he was going to be a barn burner, some nice big plays and getting the end zone, doing all of that. The injuries have really sapped him. And that's the biggest issue here is how much of a rebound does he take now that he's another full year away from that injury. And, I like him, but it really is going to depend on how much more accurate Trubisky gets this year. That was one of the bad things with him last year is the balls were just all over the place and the catch percentages were pretty low. If they can increase that catch percentage, get it up more to where, a starting wide receiver should be, then I think we're looking at a guy that could probably get close to, 900 yards, maybe 950 even, with about 7 touchdowns. And then I don't have a problem with it. But the problem is, can he get there? That is still the issue. We're just not sure.
So this is the crazy part, Mike. I'm not a Trubisky guy. Because I think he was overrated.
There's no N. There's no N in his name. It's not. It's Trubisky. No N.
Yeah, but he needs to add something to his game. So we'll add an N. So here's the other thing. But I'm a Bears offense guy. I love the offense. I love the coaching there. And it was about 4 years ago. I was doing a fantasy sports show with Daily Roto's Drew Dinkmeyer at a fantasy sports convention. And Allen Robinson was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mm-hmm. And he was praising Robinson. And his comp to Allen Robinson was Dez Bryant.
Woo.
Well, that's great for touchdowns. But was he saying, let me ask, was he saying that he would be oft injured and not have a long career? I'm asking honestly.
No. I thought it was in a positive manner, like Dez when he was in his heyday. That Allen Robinson had the same type of skills.
Okay. Well, here's what I'll say. Allen Robinson is right now NFFC ADP is the 27th receiver off the board. I think you and I have worked together long enough that we're sort of in lockstep here. It's his full year back off of the ACL injury. Obviously, the ACL injury was pretty early in 2017. So last year was a full rehab year. Jim's right with Trubisky having some inaccuracy issues. 24 touchdowns to 12 picks. Catch rate for Allen Robinson, 58.5%. Anthony Miller, 61%. And I hear a lot of Anthony Miller buzz, certainly in our community. So what does this all mean? I've drafted Trubisky in a Scott Fishbowl, which is super flex league, simply based on the upside of the offense, Tony.
Yeah,
exactly what you said. Like, I think Trubisky could be a little bit better this year. Why not give him a little bit of progression? And he's going to be on the doorstep of 30 touchdowns. So I think those can move around a little bit. Give Allen Robinson another year in the offense, another year healthy with the knee. I think he's being overlooked a little bit. But right now, that wide receiver 3 conversation, I think there's a lot worse you can do with a third wide receiver if you've done a good job with wide receivers 1 and 2 than Allen Robinson. Because I think there is upside here with this offense and with him being the number 1 wideout.
I mean, Trubisky, 24 touchdown passes last year. Jim, forgive me if I'm wrong, but 5 were in one game.
6 were in one game.
Yeah. 6 were in one game. Yeah,
that was the big breakout game, and then he like kind of went back under the radar, and then
against the Bucks, the worst defensive backfield, one of the worst defensive backfields of all time.
But it's still 6 touchdowns. We just don't see that very often. I don't care what defense it is. I get that, and everybody jumped on him in waivers that week after that week, and then of course the next couple of weeks he didn't do much, and then he had a good game here, then no. So he was very up and down, and he's learning a complex offense. I get that. So hopefully in this year he should be better. We have to hope he's better anyway.
Word came out today, the new wide receiver of the Oakland Raiders, Antonio Brown, is missing time because of frostbite on his feet. And you say, well, Tony, he plays in Oakland. Why does he have frostbite? Tony, it's 100 degrees in every state in the United States. Tony, everybody's talking about global warming. How can he have frostbite? Well, there's this cryptogenic thing. Cryogenic. And I guess you're supposed to put some things on your feet when you get in there so your feet don't get frostbitten, Mike. They think he's going to be okay, but he's missed all of practice. What the hell's going on here? And there are injuries that we stay away from. Mike Blewett, is this one we need to stay away from?
Bill Simmons termed something many years ago called the Tyson zone, meaning any story you listen to about Mike Tyson just seemed believable past a certain point. I think Antonio Brown has entered the Tyson zone, where anything you tell me about Antonio Brown, I just have to believe, because there's always something crazy coming out of his camp. Le'Veon Bell might be there too, but I didn't know that he could get frostbite from those cryotherapy chambers. I've seen images of athletes getting in and out of it. I didn't know. Do you have to wear a full bodysuit?
No. Wait. Yeah. No. You don't have to wear a full bodysuit. As a matter of fact, you don't. But you do need to wear stuff on your feet and your hands.
So let me ask,
those are the most susceptible to.
But here's the thing. And if you have a kid, you might want to cover his ears now. If you have to cover the guy's feet,
I know where you're going with this already.
Why would you? How does your penis not get affected by these things?
Because it's nice and warm and cozy there. I don't know what to tell you, dude. I can't answer that.
I'm sure it's covered up. I don't think you go in those things naked. If you did, maybe you'd have problems.
I think you do, though, Mike. That's the crazy part.
No, I think they wear underwear.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. And the only reason I actually know this is from watching the damn show Shark Tank, because they had a couple people come on and do a demonstration of one of those things. They were trying to sell them. And they went in wearing underwear, but they had to put something on their feet and gloves on their hands.
Tony, I think you need to do some research for next week's show.
All right, next week's show, I'm going to do this. Should I do it without the underwear?
I think you should try with underwear first, just in case. But you can only go in those things for a few minutes, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It is 2 minutes. Yeah, you definitely can't do more than 3 minutes.
Yeah. I don't know.
Those things get really cold.
Every story,
no doubt about it.
Every story that comes out about this guy, I was like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. It's Antonio Brown.
Well, to me,
he's got a blonde mustache. Okay.
At least this one is better than the first one that came out, where they were saying he got the frostbite when the hot air balloon he was in went too high.
Yeah. So I got to be honest about this. I'm having a hard time figuring out why Antonio Brown's going in round 2 in some of the drafts I'm in. And then I see this, and I'm like, am I the only guy that's stupid and try to pick him every time and then he drops the second round? Or people realize, you know what, he's got a few paychecks, and this guy's just going to go way off the deep end. I know he's going to get less pass attempts. He's in a new offense, but John Gruden loved this guy because he was a hard worker, and he watched his workouts. Mike, what are we going to do with Antonio Brown in these drafts?
I think Gruden does have a susceptibility to forcing the ball to somebody like Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with Gruden. I'm not in love with Carr. It's what gives me pause about Antonio Brown. For all the issues that there were in Pittsburgh, I just think that they're obviously had a good thing going offensively, even if not emotionally. I think you're hoping for Antonio Brown to force the ball so much that he can get back up to those numbers again. I just don't see that quite happening. It doesn't mean he's still not a very valuable fantasy receiver, though.
Give me your thoughts on Mr. Brown in the second round and his feet.
I'll take him in the second round. I mean, the feet are a little concerning, but look, frostbite can be very detrimental to your health. It really can. It could affect so many different things. But, from what I saw, the pitchers' feet, they look bad, but they should be able to get them right. Everybody's saying, you're listening to them day to day. They fully expect him to be back for, week one. Is he missing a little time on the field with his quarterback? Absolutely. And that'll hurt him a little bit. But I definitely think he's going to be force-fed the ball. And look, this quarterback had 4,000 yards last year with a ragtag group of nobodies where his tight end was his best receiver. Now he's going to Antonio Brown. And even Tyrell Williams is better, right, than what they had last year. So I'm not really all that worried about Antonio Brown. If I can get him in the second, I'll take him in the second, as long as Todd Gurley's off the board. If he's not off the board, I'm taking Todd Gurley before him.
There you have it. And another guy going in sometimes late in the second round. And I got to ask the question. I've been thinking this more and more, and I know why everybody's scared. But Leonard Fournette is actually going to be used more in the passing game this season than he has ever before. He actually has a quarterback that might be able to throw the ball to him. And yet he has some problems with his decision-making. He has problems playing every week. But, Mike, when we talk about upside, and we don't usually talk about the second or third round, I could see the season ending and this guy being a top 5 running back, and yet we're going to let him drop in the second round late, sometimes in the third round. That's the Jaguars' Leonard Fournette. Are we making a mistake here in bypassing everything and focusing too much on the injuries and the knuckleheadness of Leonard Fournette?
So I was breaking this down with on the show with George Kurtz the other day, my buddy at the Fantasy Sports Radio Network, and we really just decided as we were going through, we've been going team by team, division by division. The Jaguars are the least relevant fantasy team for 2019. There's only 3 draftable players right now if it's not a super flex. It's Fornette, D.D. Westbrook somewhere in the later single-digit rounds, and the Jaguars' defense. Nobody else is really draftable. Not DJ Chark, not Josh Oliver. I know Jimmy love him, but it's a long-term play. It's not really
now he's hurt.
Yeah,
now he's hurt, so that's going to hurt him.
Right. So it all goes back to one guy in Fournette. And yes, there's an injury history and there's attitude issues, but if he's just able to stay on the field, Tony, to your point, you're going to be looking in the neighborhood of 300 touches, and that's valuable no matter what.
I totally agree. What's your thoughts, Jim?
I hate the guy. I freaking hate the guy. Look, when he's on the field, he is absolutely talented. There's no doubt about it. He can put up fantasy points as good as anybody in the league. I get that. But those soft tissue injuries just seem to keep coming back. I don't know if it's bad training or what. They just can't seem to get past that. That bothers me. But we've seen other guys that had really bad starts to their career for injuries and then went on to have great careers after that. I mean, look, they used to call, and I use this all the time, people still laugh at me, but Freddie Taylor, when, first couple of years, he was Fragile Freddie. Nobody wanted to draft him because he was always hurt. And then, look, he went on to explode to have a great career. So I'm not saying he can't do it, but between everything, man, it just makes me leery. I always seem to look at somebody else when I get to that point where he might be that pick. I just almost always seem to find somebody else I want to take a chance on.
I'm going to go on a limb that no other show has done, and that's hard to do with the amount of podcasts today, the amount of shows that are out there. I am going to tell you that the Jaguars' leading receiver at the season's end will be Chris Conley, a has-been from every other team in the NFL. Chris Conley will lead the Jaguars in receptions.
Over Dede, huh?
Yep.
Well, they're talking him up like crazy down there. They're saying he's having a great camp with Foles, and Foles and him are developing a great rapport together. So, I mean, I get it. We got a totally new quarterback there. You just don't know who he's going to want to throw to.
Free in drafts. I mean, he's virtually free in drafts. So, Tony, your point about Fournette, 16th running back off the board behind guys like Melvin Gordon, who we don't know what's happening there. Kerryon Johnson, fair that he's up there. But Aaron Jones, there's a lot of Aaron Jones truthers out there. I just wonder if Jamal Williams and other players steal some touches. Right now, there's nobody to steal the touches from Fournette. So would you rather have Fournette or Marlon Mack, Leonard Fournette or D'Onta Foreman? That's really who you're making choices over. And Fournette's probably got the greatest chance to out-touch those guys. 8 games last year, 155 touches. So when he's on the field, he gets it a lot. I mean, you just hope he's healthy going into this year. It's the only guy worth a high draft pick in this offense, and D.D. Westbrook is the only other one that even clears the top 10 rounds.
But real quick, before we move on, when you look at all the running backs in that tier, in that grouping, in the second round, early third round, every single one of them has a major concern. You could start with Dalvin Cook. Again, always injured so far. Nick Chubb hasn't been the injury route, but you do have to worry about Hunt coming back for the second half of the season. Mm-hmm. How much are they going to take away from Chubb to keep him healthy? We don't know. Right now you got Melvin Gordon there. I still say he may very well hold out until week 10.
I think so. Damien
Williams. Look, I love the guy, and I'm drafting him everywhere. But, again, we only have a short shelf life of what he's done. We don't know if he can stand up a whole season. Leonard Fournette, of course, the injuries. Aaron Jones coming off injuries last year. Kerryon Johnson was injured at points last year. Marlon Mack was injured at points last year. Derrick Henry, finished the year strong, but is the team going to be smart enough to let him get that many carries from the start of the season this year, or are they going to try and get cute again? I don't know. But everybody in that and Devontae Freeman, another one coming off a big injury season. So everybody in that tier has issues this year. None of them are safe. I've almost gotten to the point where I almost want to, try and grab one of the stud running backs in the first, and then second and third round, I'm looking at very good wide receivers, and then come back in the fourth and fifth and try to get guys like Josh Jacobs or David Montgomery, even Mark Ingram, guys like that at that point. So Tony, that whole area is tough.
Yeah, Tony, the funny part about all those names that Jim just ripped off, putting Melvin Gordon aside for a second, because obviously if he's on the field, he's extremely valuable, a top 5 type running back. But the guys that are the most bankable and that have a really good path to out-touching all of the others are Kerryon Johnson, Fornette, and Derrick Henry, because all of the other guys have competition there, and Freeman is a walking injury. So that's kind of interesting when they're spread throughout that second round, that second 12 running backs, those RB2s. And I think you're selling me on Fournette, but you have to understand the obvious risks.
There are some risks there, and I think there's risks in life. I got to ask you guys, though, you just look at the preseason, how that's coming underway. And I got to tell you, there's one story, and we were always tell people to be hesitant of what they read. I'm starting to get a little worried about Damien Williams, that Andy Reid's not a believer. Damien Williams has been out 5 or 6 days with injuries, and I read today that he's going to start in the preseason game. If he starts tomorrow, that tells me Andy Reid is not in love with this guy. It's usually the opposite, but if you're going to throw a hurt player out there in preseason game 1, Jim, I'm worried.
Yeah, you have to be worried. There's no doubt about it. It's hard to say that he'll be there, week 1 and still be hurt, but you have to worry. There's no doubt about it.
Mike, your thoughts?
I wouldn't start my starting running back at all if I were
Me either.
I would never play him. Not one down. Just
preseason,
have fun
I agree.
Practice. What is the upside? What is he going to do? Oh, look at that 12-yard run that he had. Big deal.
Yeah.
So, and what if he rips off a 90-yard run? What did it prove? Nothing. That he's fast? Great. We know that. We watch him practice. We drafted him in the first round or traded for him or whatever. It's not necessary. Barkley and guys like that shouldn't even be they should be in street clothes on the sidelines, warm-ups.
Totally agree.
I'm out completely. 16-game schedule, 18-game schedule, I'm out on preseason.
I got to tell you guys, we're going to all watch these preseason games because we miss football. That's what we do. We're going to watch them. So we're going to be looking for position battles. So I got to ask Jim. Jim, are you fired up to tune into preseason football and shot the Redskins quarterback battle between Colt McCoy, Case Keenum, and Dwayne Haskins? Will that captivate you?
It won't captivate me, but I do like to watch it. Like you said, we're jonesing for football. The Association of American Football League didn't do quite what everybody expected it to do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the games. Now, as far as the Washington quarterbacks, right now, I think if I'm them, I'm starting Colt McCoy to start the season too. No way I'm starting the season with Dwayne Haskins because they got the first 3 games are against killer defenses, and there's no way I want him subjected to that right out of the gate. We knew he was a little raw coming in. Give him a little time anyway. At some point, they're going to bring him in. I just wouldn't start the season with him.
I agree with Jim, but somewhat. I agree with Jim on the whole Dwayne Haskins situation. But I think Colt McCoy, in my mind, is your perfect backup. He knows the plays. He'll go out there. He ain't going to embarrass you, but that's what he is. I think Case Keenum is like the 27th, 28th best quarterback to the 34th best quarterback. That I think he'll be the starter if I look and break down this battle. And they had Colt McCoy, and they brought Case Keenum in, so I think that's also there. Mike, what are you fired up about?
I just can't believe that they're in this position, that they've had months to work with this guy, and he's not going to play. I don't care how when you look at the Washington roster, top to bottom, it's a pretty good roster. Their defense is talented. They have enough guys on the offensive side of the ball that they should at least be able to move the ball down the field. It's obviously going to be a more run-heavy team. Doxson can't be healthy. Paul Richardson got a lot of money. I'm not sure why. So I get that the offense needs pieces, but they drafted Geis, and they have a good offensive line with the Trent Williams thing obviously hanging over their head. I just can't believe that they're in this position that they have to figure this out between Keenum and McCoy. Doug Williams has come out and said it's going to be a committee, not Gruden, making the choice. Gruden's got one job. He's got to get Haskins ready to play in 1 month. It doesn't look at this point like it's going to happen. Demoted to third string, whatever. He's got to get there, because I just think starting Keenum with the hopes of bringing in Haskins in October is a defeatist attitude. You can't be a team with your eyes on the playoffs and settling for some sort of quarterback switch in the middle of the year. One guy's got to be good to go. That's the way I look at it.
I totally agree. This is going to be.
I absolutely don't.
I love. You know.
Wait. I just got to build on that. Sorry, Tony. I don't mean to cut you off, but if you put the kid out there to start going up against Chicago, teams like that, and he gets his ass beat down because that offensive line is still hurting, and looks like now they're going to lose Trent Williams, which is going to be huge for that offensive line.
Yeah, I agree.
This kid could take a total bum rush every single time he steps on that field against those really top defenses to start the season, and you could just shatter his confidence. I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing, or the kid may never recover from it. It's all possible. But at the same time, you knew, look, everybody talked about this before the draft, even after the draft when they were on their teams, that this wasn't the greatest quarterback class that we've seen in a while. It just wasn't. These guys were all works in progress. Now, Kyler Murray, he's going to get his absolute chance just because they want to design the entire offense around him, and I get that. That built to his strengths, that's great. Haskins still needs a lot of work. He's got a good arm. He can make good throws, but if you start getting pressure on him, that's where he breaks down. That's been the knock on him since forever. So if these defenses are hitting him left and right, you could lose all of his confidence in those early games.
I don't have any problem. In the first round. Honestly.
You know what? I don't look at it that way. There's been plenty of good quarterbacks that have sit, on the bench watching another quarterback play for longer periods than that. Look at Aaron Rodgers, how long he had to wait before he got his shot. Yeah, but he
sat behind Brett Favre, and Eli sat behind Kurt Warner. Those guys are in the Hall of Fame. It's Case Keenum we're talking about here. They're pulling this out of there, to try to get this, just to get the team ready to go. Now, to Jim's point, they start out at Philly, host Dallas, host Chicago, at Giants, and then New England. That's a tough first 5 weeks. But Tony, I'm of the opinion that Haskins should have been ready to go, and the fact that he's not is a failure on the part of the team.
It's the Redskins, baby. Always a little controversy.
And don't let the coach pick the QB. Of course, that's smart.
It's always one of the craziest things. Last but not least on this week's show, Jim, what was your thoughts on the Hall of Fame induction and the Hall of Fame speeches? I was there, and I watched a little bit, and then I couldn't turn it off. I thought it was entertaining. Your thoughts on the Hall of Fame inductions and the Hall of Fame speeches last weekend?
They're good speeches. Those guys have people write them for them for the most part, and that's nothing wrong with that. It's really hard to really get a ton of it. I like the fun of it. Ed Reed was fun. I like that he has fun with it. He's all into that, and to me, that's what I like to get from it. I think Tony Gonzalez had a good speech. I think he did a good job with it. Ty Law, I remember seeing a little bit of his. I thought was very good. So, I mean, everybody has bits and pieces that I really like, but some of them are just too damn long for me to enjoy all of them.
I'll tell you what, I agree with Jim wholeheartedly. I think there was a lot of great stuff there, but I agree 110%. They need to cut it down a little, chop it off. Man, oh, my God.
They did. 5 years ago, they instituted a limit, and they said 10 minutes each, and the speeches got increasingly better. Kevin Green had this great speech where he's had everybody jumping out of his seat. He thanked the military. It was amazing. And then you know what happened? Ray Lewis took them up last year, and he said, "You're not going to time limit me." And he went 40 minutes, and now everybody's back to doing that again. We don't need 40-minute speeches. Just condense it. You can thank everybody you want in 10 minutes, and your speech is going to be way better and way more memorable if you do 10 minutes. By the way, most people are only going to see 30 seconds of your speech anyway. So make it memorable. 10 minutes, energy, in and out. Tony Gonzalez, Ed Reed, I have massive respect for those guys, but 35 minutes, what are we doing?
Yeah, well, and that's it. You just lose focus.
There you have it. You have WTF Fantasy. Check us out once a week, anywhere you get a podcast. And, Jim, what other great stuff do you got going on this fabulous network?
We're putting podcasts out each and every day. Most days, multiple podcasts. We have about 40 hours of different podcasts now each and every week. So a lot of great things coming on. You can go to fulltimefantasy.com and see each and every podcast. You can actually listen to them right there on the site. And also at FF Champs, we've pushed out our premium package promo till the end of this week, till Sunday. You can now get $40 off of our premium membership for the full year, and that also includes our DFS site, gppmaster.com, all of our award-winning tools, and a chance to win a seat in next year's FFWC World Championship by playing in a free Survivor pool as a premium member. So a lot of things going on. All you have to do is go to ffchamps.com, use promo code 2019 to get $40 off a year-long membership.
Mike, what do you got going on? Anything like that?
No discount codes to hand out, but you can listen to me on the weekends on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Come this fall, I'll be anchoring the Sunday coverage. So check me out on Fantasy Sports Radio Network. By the way, last thing on Washington, Champ Bailey made the Hall of Fame. Nobody called Champ Bailey from Washington until 3 days before he was being officially inducted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
7 months went by. Nobody from Washington called him. Nobody called him, Tony.
Wow, that's tough.
Daniel Snyder, man. I'm always amazed by these NFL owners. Like, how do they get so rich, yet they run their franchises so poorly?
And that's the thing. He'll point fingers at everybody. You know how it gets done? Just pick up the phone. Yeah, just text Champ. Be like, congrats, man. I'm sorry we traded you. Just be magnanimous about it. It's insane. Bugs me.
Oh, and there is one last piece of news. I almost forgot. I can't believe it. I forgot it. It was just announced tonight, so I guess it's out there, and I can put it out there, that Full-Time Fantasy has now become the fantasy football provider for Sports Illustrated Digital. So all of their digital content for fantasy will now be coming from fulltimefantasy.com.
Yeah, in fact, I'm fired up about it, and I can't wait. And congratulations to everybody involved. So I can now be part of the swimsuit issue, and I'm looking forward to that.
It's gonna be good stuff. I'm really waiting. Waiting for that.
Just wait till you use the cryogenic, thing first.
Yeah, you might have to be.
Then you can get some real shrinkage going on.
You might have to blur you out from the waist down, but
yes, yeah. Let me. That reminds me. It's a little tip.
Enough shots.
Yeah, for a little tip for all you single guys out there, it always looks cool on TV when you watch these shows to be in the hot tub with a woman. Never be in a hot tub on your first time you're naked with a woman, because the shrinkage is going to reduce the size and reduce what she thinks of you. So, Mike, I think that's a solid tip out there.
Never on the first end of fantasy football podcast.
Bill Simmons, does he have that going on?
Probably not.
No.
We're better than him.
WTF Fantasy, where you give you the fantasy news and we tell you not what to do in the hot tub and who to hang out with. Jim, we're out of here.